Alright y'all, welcome back to another video here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some tech stuff before we go down and make a hit down here at FL2K. It is Friday morning. Day two. We're going to get some shakedowns finally. We worked on the car a little bit last night. We have some upgrades and some more data that we are going to be gathering as we make passes here. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get started, I do want to let you guys know we still got the Charlie Murphy giveaway going on. I'm ready to see that car go to someone new and someone enjoy a nice badass 5-second street car. All you gotta do enter is go to lsnasty.com, go down there, get some merch. Every item is an entry to win, except stickers. Stickers don't count as entries, but you can get them because they're cool and everyone loves a sticker. But like, don't go and buy 6,000 stickers and think it's 6,000 entries, because that's not fair to the people that are buying everything else. So try to keep it fair. Go down to lsnasty.com, get some merch. We got hats, socks. I mentioned socks. We got socks. We got hoodies. We got shirts. We got face masks. We got socks. What else we got? Socks. We got socks. LS Nasty socks. And we have a past collections tab, which is first come, first serve until it runs out of stock. Those are double entry at this point in time. And then I have my Storm Hub shirts, which were intended for my guys working storms, but I'm letting you guys get some if you want. Those are double entry. So there's two ways to get double entries. I don't see myself doing many more double entry opportunities during this giveaway. I got a couple new shirts coming out, but I'm trying to keep it straightforward. And yeah, so hope everybody gets entered that wants to win a badass 5-second car. And we're going to dive into today's video. Matt's going to talk to us a little bit about some new sensors we put on the car. We put a Davis Technologies vehicle position sensor, a VPS, on there, and we put a shock travel sensor from Low Dollar Motorsports. So I was wearing their shirt yesterday. He sent me a shirt and some stickers, so thank you for that. And they got us on there quick. Matt came to LS Nasty and wired this up in no time, and got the shock travel sensor, or shock travel sensor, VPS wired up. Yes. So Matt's going to explain a little bit on what it does. This is it's good to have data. We were flying blind before. We'd always be looking at slow-mo cameras, trying to figure out what it's doing suspension-wise and everything, and this is going to make it a little bit easier to have some raw data to say, this is what's going on, we need to make this change to improve this, because our goal is we want to get faster and faster every time, and we have been. We've had Kevin helping out with us. I mean, we've had trying to get better and more consistent opposed to just throwing the kitchen sink in it and knocking the tires off of it. We made a bar angle change. We've been taking a little bit easier on tune-up wise, and we've been getting faster every pass. So that's our goal, is to keep progressing. I don't know much about the VPS. I understand what it does, but explaining to you guys, I'm probably not the best one to do so. Matt's going to take over from here, and if you guys have a race program at home, after seeing what this does and the data it gathers, the shock travel sensor and the VPS are two very useful tools. So Matt, take it away.
With the VPS, you can eliminate a lot of things. You don't need a laser ride height sensor for the front to tell how high the front is in the air, and you don't need a G meter, and you also get a lot of other good usable data that can be used for chassis tuning. It can be used for safety. If you see a large yaw rate or pitch rate, like something's happened with the car, it's going real sideways, if you have a pneumatic parachute launcher that's controlled off of some type of engine management, you can release that, so hopefully it'll drag the car back around straight. They're $1,000, which does seem kind of expensive, but you get a lot of data because you don't need a G meter, you don't need a $600 laser ride height sensor, and it gives you some other stuff. Like, you can go in here to the virtual time slip, you make a run, and it'll tell you your 60 foot, your 330, 660, the virtual reaction time. And it's not 100% necessary to have this display, but you have to have the display to initially set it up. So when you go in, you set your outputs. You go in, and it's got utilities to check it out, to make sure you can test the outputs. But if you know somebody that has a VPS, you can use their screen. But if you're wanting to race, purchase it with a screen. That way you can see your virtual time slip. So if you're doing some no time and they don't cut your time slips or they don't do anything, then you can know, like, hey, I know I went this fast, and you know if you need to go faster or you're run a personal best or anything like that. So getting into it, in the HOLLEY we set up different outputs: VPS 1, 2, 3, pitch, yaw, roll, and then you have the G, Y, and X, and then the rear shock travel. Right now the rear shock travel is fully extended because the car's on Pro Jacks. And if you come over here, and I'm going to very gently move the VPS, and you'll see the red line, which is the pitch. Pitch goes up, returns, pitch goes down. I'm rotating it forward and back. And then you have the roll, which is the blue line in the HOLLEY, so that'll tell you which way it's rolling. And then the yaw, so if I were to grab the VPS and twist it sideways gently, you can see that it's showing the yaw. So with those, that's how you would calibrate it. So this is set up to 2 degrees. The VPS reads from -12 to +12 degrees of angle. and -5 to 5 degrees of G. So it'll get a really wide spectrum, and with that you can take and come in here to like the HOLLEY and use your advanced tables. So with this advanced table, we have it set up to where we have VPS wheelie control. It's a timing offset. X-axis is VPS pitch. Y-axis is rear shock travel. I like to set it up to where you also incorporate a rear shock travel, because what happens is when you make a run, and like any car, you're gonna need to get data. So you need to make a run where it doesn't wheelie, and then maybe put a little bit more power in it and see where it starts to wheelie, and then you need to look at your rear shock travel when it does that, because when you take off and you launch it, your VPS is going to see that initial pitch. Well, that initial pitch is not necessarily meaning it's wheeling, but what happens is when the thing pitches up, the rear end's going to extend, it's going to level the car out, so your VPS will be at 0 angle. It won't have any degree. But then if you have like say 5 inches of shock travel and then you start to see it pitch up, then the car will definitely be in a wheelie. So that's something where you need to incorporate rear shock travel. So this one, I have it set up. This is just a baseline. You know, the more runs you get, the more you can tune it. You can make it more aggressive or less aggressive if it's tuned right. I've done a lot of cars where when they do wheelie, it comes up and it just sits right back down. You never have to lift. It feels like somebody just reached up the front end and pushed it back down. So we got it set up to 5 inches of shock travel. So down here, when the shock travel's at 3 inches, VPS angle's at 2 degrees. You're not pulling any timing. As the shock travel comes up and the angle comes up, it gets more and more aggressive. So if you have 2 degrees angle and the shock travel's 5 inches, it's trying to pull a lot of timing out because it's into an aggressive wheelie. So every car's different. There's no cookie cutter like, hey, this will work for you because it worked for somebody else. That's the worst thing to do in drag racing. You can't just assume like your shock settings. You can't say, oh, well, so-and-so is running them 25 clicks out and I need to run that. Every car's different, every chassis is different, every setup's different. It'd be like taking, hey, I got a 481X and I'm gonna put that tune-up in a stock LS. Like, everything is totally different. And you need to really figure everything out for your setup. So the time and retard is very aggressive, but some engines, they need a lot of time and retard. Some engines need a little time and retard. So that's something that you need to kind of adjust. I would err to the aggressive side at first, because if it does wheelie, you want to catch it. But you can start bringing it back to where when it comes up, it pulls the minimum amount of power out to maintain the angle. So when it comes up, you know, if you need to take 5 degrees out to get it set down, that's what you want, because you know, the more power you pull out, the slower the car is going to go. So the name of the game is the maximum amount of power without it wheeling. So we can go back here to the rear and we'll show you the shocks. All right, so we installed the shock travel sensor, and we only did 1 shock travel sensor. You can do two. There's never such a thing as too much data, but with the VPS having the roll position, you can tell what the chassis is doing in relation to the rear end. So with the 1 shock travel sensor, we can tell, like right now it's fully extended. As it's compressed, the shock travel sensor will compress into the body. It's a Hall effect sensor, so it's 0 to 5 volt output, and you can tell exactly how much travel you have. Now, one thing you want to make sure is that you have a longer shock travel than your shock, because if you put it in here and you got an 8-inch travel shock and you put a 7-inch travel shock sensor, when the thing extends, it's going to damage the shock travel sensor. Another thing is you want to try to get it as close to the body of the shock. So even if, like, some cars you have the body of the shocks angled, I see a lot of guys that they'll run the shock angled, but they'll have the shock travel vertical. The problem with that is anytime you change the angle of it, you're also changing the travel. So at a 45-degree angle, if the shock moved 1 inch, the shock travel would only move a 1/2 inch. So when they're both perpendicular with each other, that's the best. You're going to have the most accurate data. So this one's from Low Dollar Motorsports. It's a 10-inch travel shock sensor. Brandon, you know, he puts out really good products. He has the shock travel sensors. He has the pressure sensors, the combo sensors. So if you need anything, definitely hit him up. He also has these awesome nuts. They mount onto it. It's a 1/2 20 thread, so you can just extend it out, and then, you know, if you got to devil nut it, however you want to do it. So if you need anything, hit them up.
All right, so we talked about all the sensors we got and everything we got going on. Now, what does that do data-wise for our racing program?
All right, so what the rear shock travel is, to me, one of the key components of data, because you can tell what the rear end's doing, and there's a lot of things that affect how the rear end is going to extend. So you're going to have your anti-squat, which is mostly controlled by the separation of the bars. So if you have a lot of separation in the rear, little separation in the front, it's going to be a lot of anti-squat.
And we talked about that previously, because we actually took some anti-squat out. We made a bar angle change to make it less aggressive, because it got to the point where it was so aggressive making a little bit more power, it's getting more aggressive, we're having issues getting down track.
Yeah, so usually when the car makes more power, you need less anti-squat because you're using the power. So the anti-squat is a number that is how much the rear end will separate. So at 150% anti-squat, and this is all at ride height, and a lot of calculators use it at ride height, but we're going to go into that in a minute. But if you have 150% anti-squat, the chassis will want to extend. It's the mechanical advantage of the chassis will want to cause it to extend. 100% anti-squat. If it was true 100% anti-squat, when you let go of the trans brake, the chassis would neither extend or compress. Negative anti-squat, so if it was at 50%, the chassis would want to compress. So a lot of people think like, oh, the car's squatting and, you know, oh, more weight on it, but the best way to think about it is when you see these cars extending, it's putting more bite in the tire. Because imagine if you could lock the car on an axis, so the car could not move. It was locked in this position. What way would put more pressure on the tire? If the tire was pulling up toward the body or if it was pushing down into the ground. So that's what it's doing. Whenever it extends, it's picking the car up and it's forcing the tire into the ground. So if you see a car squat, it actually has less bite in it. So like slick cars tend to do that because a slick doesn't want a lot of bite. Independent rear suspension cars do that, and that's just a design of the way the control arms are. They can't generate a lot of anti-squat. But if you want to change that, most of the time you're going to want to change your upper bar angle. The lower bar angle, you can change a few things, like you can change your instant center height. So a higher instant center will want to transfer weight more than a lower instant center, but at the same point it can cause it to transfer too much weight. So there's a fine line. Every chassis is different. Your wheelbase, your weight distribution, there's so many things that come into play. And if you use a calculator, don't expect the numbers to be completely accurate, because the biggest thing that the calculator uses is your center of gravity. And a lot of people say like the camshaft height, but that is not true. Every car is different, and the driver's different. A heavier driver will cause the center of gravity to be lower. If they have a large torso, it'll be higher. There's so many things that come into effect. And that.
What about a large? Never mind.
Oh yeah. That would be a very low, but you don't have to worry about that. So the only way to know your true center of gravity is to calculate it. And the way you would do that is you would put the car on scales, you would measure the weight, you would record all of the wheel weights, and then you start to pick the rear end up. So what I do is I take a 4-post or a 2-post lift, and I put the arms like this, and then I ratchet strap them together so it cups the tire, and then I pick it up. The higher the better. If you can pick the thing up 60, 70 inches in the air, the more accurate it'll be. So when you do that, then you measure the front wheel weight, and there's a few calculators online. You'll put that in there, and you need to do it with you in the vehicle, because when you're out of the vehicle, your center of gravity height can change a couple inches. Those 2 inches, they don't seem like a lot, but if you put it in a calculator, that could change your anti-squat 30 or 40%. So you might think, oh, I'm at 150%, but you're really at 120. So if you really want to have some accurate measurements, you want to measure your center of gravity height. So
2 inches definitely is a lot.
Yeah, 2 inches can make or break the deal. So that's one thing you need to do. And there's a lot of things. You know, these cars, it's a parallel 4-link, so you have the parallel 4-link, you have an equal length arms, so the length of the arms also dictates what the chassis does as it droops. So those calculators, a lot of them, they measure at ride height. Well, the car's not going down the track at ride height. It spends very little of its time at ride height. So you need to figure out what it's doing as it's extending. So the equal length 4-link will have progressively increasing anti-squat.
So the further it separates, the more aggressive.
The more anti-squat. So a stock suspension Mustang, for example, has progressively decreasing. So they start off at 180, and when it extends, 4 inches, that upper bar angle is become to where it's parallel with the ground, and the car won't separate anymore. The car separates from the mechanical advantage. Once it loses that mechanical advantage, it will not separate anymore. Some people, they use pinion angle, so when you run your pinion angle down, the U-joint under power wants to straighten out. So if your pinion angle's down, you apply power, it wants to straighten out. So that can cause some separation, but a majority of it is from the bar angle. So there's a lot of things. This is what I was talking about with the shocks. So if you have a really aggressive anti-squat, you're going to need a lot of shock dampening, a lot of rebound dampening, because this thing is want to, just blow through the shock.
So like on like an IRS car where you're controlling the squat, by tighten up the compression, so it doesn't squat as much. This, when you click the button, it's literally trying to separate, and if you didn't have any control over that rebound, that thing would go whoop, and
top out
just like that.
too fast. So you want it to happen fast, but you don't want it to happen too fast. So that's what we're gonna look at the shock travel data. You know, we can go, hey, release the trans brake, and 1.2 seconds out, it was at full extension. And that's where you want to get into really tuning it. Like if it tops them out too quick, you can start adding some rebound dampening. You can see, and there's a lot of things that you need to do when you really try to start going fast, because the tune-up will change, the track conditions will change. A tighter track is going to need more rebound dampening, more power will need more rebound dampening. So there's a lot of variables that when you have this data, you really need to record it. So the HOLLEY, it has sections in there where you can put in the time slip data and the track conditions and everything. Do that, because then you can go, hey, we raced so-and-so and the weather was this and we had this much power in the car, and these are going to be a good shock setting to go to. That's what wins races, you know, being able to go off the trailer, go down every time, being consistent, knowing where to go to. That's the biggest thing in drag races. It's not about just making, you know, 3,000 horsepower or having a fast car. It's being able to go down every time, and then being able to gauge the track conditions to know how much power the car will take. Because a lot of times it's not about, hey, we just, you know, everything it'll take. It's about knowing that, hey, the track's going to take a 102 60 foot, or the track's going to take a 110 60 foot. You know, the track's loose up top, so we need to get all the power in soon. There's data is what will help you go fast, and recording that data accurately and cataloging it will help you go fast at other tracks at later dates.
And that's what we're doing. We're trying to get more data. We're trying to be more consistent. We're trying to just do whatever we can to do better.
Yep. So, and then these shocks, this is two-way adjustable. So you have your rebound dampening and your compression dampening up here on the canisters. There's some shocks that are four-way dampening, so you'd have 2 rebound and 2 compression, and those are based off of the shock velocity. So as this shock's traveling, you calculate it. So if it moves X amount of inches in this time, then it's this velocity. Most shocks will move around 18 to 20 inches per second, some less, some more. So that would be the high-speed valving. Then when you start going down the track, the shock slows down. So the inch per second might be 5 inches per second. That would go into the low-speed valving. So when you really start getting into some advanced shocks, a lot of motorcycle shocks are like that, dirt bikes, street bikes, they have high and low speed. So a fast event will be high speed, and a slow event will be low speed. So then you get into even more tuning, and you know, it's very difficult. But you know, when you're going, you know, 970 to 60 foot, and you want to try to tune it out then into the track, it takes all the little things that have to work together to have a fast car. When everything works together, that's when you have a fast car.
And the reason why we're talking about this more is we're just trying to educate some people at home, and let some people that might not care about being educated, they can kind of understand what all goes into. Because I think, like on my channel, like we show us going out racing, we spend a lot of time at the track not racing. Like 90% of the time you're at the track, you're waiting around to make a pass.
Yep.
But you're doing adjustments, you're trying to get data, and people don't understand how difficult it is and what all goes into making a pass. I mean, there's so much, like even just talking about this, like this is like 2 small things.
Yep, yeah. So there's a lot. I mean, that, you know, it's not all fun and games. We don't just, you know, take the car to the track, make a pass, come back, you know, hang around, go cruise, do whatever in the pits. It's a lot of work to the car. It's a lot of changes. It's making sure that the car is safe to go out the next time. That's the biggest thing, is safety. You never want to try to get the car together or make a change that won't be safe, because that one pass, winning that one race, isn't worth killing yourself, isn't worth tearing your car up. So whatever you do, don't get in a rush, make sure everything's safe.
All right, well, the next video we're going to be racing, making some passes. So I think we'll get 3 passes today live, not on this video, but the next video is going to be today. So we'll get 3 passes in the heat of the day. So you guys are going to hear us talking about some adjustments. We're going to be talking about the conditions of the track, and it's more of getting down track, getting some good data, not trying to go, you know, personal best every time. So that's what we're going to do. And we got our crew with us here. Ben's laying out, tanning.
Safety. I'm a safety officer. I just got done checking the fire bottle.
Is it full?
It's full. It's in the green.
All right, we're good.
You got to do that every time.
Wes, what are you doing here?
Filming.
Look at this. Cameraman. Logan, what are you doing here?
I hope you bought some merchandise on the website to win that beautiful car sitting beside you.
God, you want a pay raise, don't you?
Dude, I just want to go make a pass in it.
When we get back, it's all you, bud. All right? It's all you. And then there's Jason over there. Jason!
Jason's putting his baby oil on.
Director of baby oil.
It's coming out.
All right. Jason looks like he's gonna do some lawn care in a little bit with that shirt on, but I think that's gonna wrap up today's video. If you guys have any questions or comments or any input, please drop a comment down below. We'd love to have a discussion in the comment section, and we'll see you guys in tomorrow's upload.